The ninth season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Sunday at 5 p.m.
Once again, from the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha, Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Consider This. I'm Andrea McMaster. We're so glad that you could be with us today. Today, we're joined by Nebraska Attorney General John Bruning. John, thanks so much for being here today.
Glad to be here.
Glad that you could join us. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about your background first off, so viewers know who you are. Started with a private law firm, moved as a state senator for 6 years, now in the Attorney General's office. Did you ever see yourself in this place?
You know, there was no grand plan. I actually got out of law school and I worked for a little company here in Omaha called Vital Learning, and it was great. It was entrepreneurial. It was something that most of my friends and classmates weren't doing. They were going to work for law firms, and ended up running for legislature to take a big pay cut, like most people do when they run for legislature. It pays $12,000 a year then, as it does now, and loved it. Loved every minute of serving in the legislature. It was a privilege. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Do you think having your experience with the unicameral is helping you now in your office as an Attorney General?
Yeah, I do. You know, a big part of what we do in the Office of the Attorney General is deal with state senators, especially during the session. They have constant questions. They want to make sure legislation they're proposing is constitutional. They want to make sure they're going about it in the best way. And they also look to our office for leadership on issues involving criminal justice. So every year that I've been Attorney General and previous Attorneys General have offered a crime package. State senators carry the bills. We help push the bills and lobby for the bills, but I think it's made our state safer to have Attorney Generals leading in that fashion. Obviously, I'm full-time now as Attorney General. The state senators aren't, and so they look to us to help chart the course when it comes to criminal justice, and we've been effective at doing that.
Okay, well, I want to make sure that people really understand what your office does, because I think maybe consumer protection, people think with the Attorney General's office, but you do so much more. Do you find that the public probably doesn't have a very good idea of what your office does?
I think that's probably true. I mean, you know, in a phrase, we're the state's lawyer. So everything from civil issues, somebody slips and falls at the Capitol and hurts themselves and sues the state, we defend the state. Or if a child's in foster care and something bad happens to them and that family sues the state, we defend the state's interests. So we're always there to defend the state. But we're also a prosecutor's shop. We have concurrent jurisdiction with all the county attorneys in this state. So we're not doing speeding tickets like they are, but a lot of times if it's a rural county and they have a murder or a rape, or a child's been molested, they're going to call our prosecutors because we have specialists that can help. We do that. But we also, you know, we get involved in the politics. We're working on shaping criminal justice policy. So the meth bills, the sexual predator bills, a lot of those originate in our shop, and we get the governor on board and a senator, and we try to make policy to make the state safer.
Okay, well, I want to just, at any given time, the office has more than 2,000 active cases in areas. I'm just going to list some of them. So people out there, so I'm going to read what some of them are, as diverse as protection or prosecution of child abusers and major drug dealers, environmental protection and enforcement, death penalty appeals, water law, wrongful discharge from employment, eminent domain, state constitutional law, federal constitutional law, consumer protection, automobile accidents, discipline of healthcare professionals, and inmate litigation. So, and I'm sure the list just continues to go on.
And we have specialists in all those areas. You know, the inmates are very litigious. They have nothing to do all day, so they're filing lawsuits. We have 3 or 4 people that do nothing but that. Water law, something I'm very proud of. In our office, before I got there was not an agriculture and natural resources section. There is now, and water is a huge issue in the state of Nebraska. I mean, it's the currency of the future in a lot of ways. I mean, this is a valuable natural resource. We have lots of it in the Ogallala Aquifer, and other states are trying to get it, trying to get it from us or keep it before it gets here. We're doing a lot of, I think, groundbreaking work in that section. So there's important work being done in the Attorney General's office. You mentioned medical professionals. If a doctor decides they're going to snort cocaine or get drunk before they come and do your surgery, who follows up on that to take their license? The answer is our office does. And we take that responsibility very seriously. Nobody wants a drunk medical professional, a nurse or a doctor working on them, and so we make sure that they lose their license until they get things right.
Well, this might be hard to answer, but is there any key part or any specific part of your job that you see as the most critical or the most important?
You know, one of the things I've really felt to be important has been the criminal justice aspect of it. The legislature for years has tasked the Attorney General's office with being the group that goes out to assist county attorneys who need our help. So rural county attorneys, a lot of times you'll find somebody that's paid $25,000 a year to do all the cases in a little rural county. Well, if a murder case comes in, that could take months and months. They don't have time for it. They're trying to do wills on the side to make a living, and our office can come in and do those cases. You know, the Tina Brandon case, for example, in Richardson County years ago, nearly bankrupted Richardson County. Well, the Attorney General's Office Criminal Prosecution Unit was designed for just that sort of a case. So we can go down there, help, and the county doesn't end up incurring $1 million worth of expenses to hire outside people to help out. We're there so we can help. I think that's critical, and frankly, it's something I think is important.
Okay. And the Attorney General's office is split up into a couple of different bureaus. I'm going to list some of those: civil litigation, criminal, public protection, legal services. Well, let's talk about in the criminal bureau, internet safety.
Yeah.
For those who watch TV, they've probably seen some of the commercials where you are passionate about stopping internet crime against children.
Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about, this is huge right now. Of course, a lot of people too have seen the huge Dateline stories where they're finding some of these sexual predators who are contacting young children online.
Yeah.
So how easy is it for parents out there to hit reality here? How easy is it for a sexual predator to entice a child online?
It is sadly extremely easy. In fact, if we have a computer and I were to show you and I were to log on as 13-year-old Holly and say, I'm home alone today, my parents are both at work, you would be stunned at how quickly, right here in Nebraska, there would be people saying, oh, you're home alone? Well, maybe we should meet at the mall. Can you ride your bike to the mall? Or where do you live? I'll come to you. This would happen right now, right here, middle of the day in Nebraska, morning, night, anytime. There are predators out there surfing for our children. And we've arrested and prosecuted dozens of them, but there are hundreds and hundreds more that are out there surfing for our kids. And it's a pretty scary thing. So what we've tried to do through the public service announcements, and I've given maybe 100 speeches to thousands of kids, middle school kids typically, just warn them that this goes on. Don't believe everything you see on the internet. Don't necessarily trust people you meet on the internet. Don't go meet strangers on the internet. It's a very risky behavior, but a lot of our kids do it.
What is some information and what are some of the warnings that you do then share with those teenagers?
Well, we tell kids that first of all, the predators are out there looking for them because they don't really recognize that. When you're 13, I don't think it really dawns on you that there's a 30 or a 40 or a 50-year-old who's sexually interested in you as a 13-year-old. It just doesn't really click. So we tell them that, and I think the recognition of that is half the battle. We also tell parents, keep an eye on what your kids are doing. They don't have a right to privacy. Kids don't have a right to privacy. They'll say they want to be private, but really they have a right to be kept safe by their parents. And one of the things we did in our office, we went after Yahoo for their user-created chat rooms because they were a cesspool of bad guys looking for kids. Under the schools and education heading, there were user-created chat rooms where the predators would hang out, and if a kid came in, bad stuff would happen. We went after Yahoo with New York. I went and got Eliot Spitzer, the Attorney General in New York. We talked to Yahoo. Yahoo shut down 70,000 user-created chat rooms in a settlement with the state of Nebraska and the state of New York. And they paid Nebraska $1 million. They paid New York $100,000. That money we're using to hire more investigators, to do a law enforcement conference on internet safety. We're going to use Yahoo's money to make Nebraska even safer. And in fact, by shutting down those chat rooms, we made Nebraska even safer. But this type of thing does go on, and parents need to monitor their children's behavior either through software or put that computer in a public area and keep an eye on what your kids are looking at.
Mm-hmm. We do hear the warnings so often, but you still hear about the problems and what's occurring, so maybe that's not enough.
It's still going on. I promise you it's still going on right here in Nebraska every day. And maybe we've made a difference. We find more of the bad guys when they end up meeting with our investigators. They say, are you a police officer? They think that's going to make them get away with it if they get to court, and it doesn't, of course. If we catch them, we're still going to lower the boom. One of the laws that we've passed is to make internet solicitation of children a crime. It didn't used to be a crime. It used to be you had to solicit them face to face. The bad guy with the wood paneled station wagon hanging out of the corner with the candy. That used to be the only way to convict him. Now, internet solicitation is also a crime, and we've convicted several people under that new law that we passed in 2003.
Okay.
One of the first laws we went after as Attorney General. It's been very useful to us.
Well, a very good one. A new law that also took effect recently here in July significantly changes the way that the state manages sex offenders. And I know Governor Heineman praised this new law, saying that it's one of the best ones that any state has in the nation for sex offenders. Though some have been critical of this law, though, because the state will spend more than $23 million a year to treat and supervise sex offenders, more than double what it spends now.
I think it's a great law. That we've had a nice partnership with Governor Heineman, State Senator Pat Bourne, who's the chairman of the Judiciary Committee in the legislature, outgoing. He's term limited. But the three of us, Heineman, Bourne, and I, have pushed this sex predator law this year, and I think it's really a very comprehensive solution to a number of problems. We have more supervision. We allow residency restrictions of only 500 feet if cities want to do that. We have increased sentences for crimes against young children. I think it's a groundbreaking law. I have nothing but high regard for Governor Heineman and Senator Bourne. Senator Bourne, by the way, is a Democrat. Governor Heineman and I are Republicans. It was a bipartisan bill. Ernie Chambers supported it. I think it's one of the best laws passed in the country. Other states have just done the heavy sentence. We did much, much more, including monitoring and review of these people when they come out of prison to make sure that they've cleaned up their act.
Well, if we can break down this law a little bit, I want you to talk on a couple of points, especially some of the places where people have been a little bit critical of the law. So one of the changes to the new law, as you mentioned, sex offenders likely will spend more time in prison. Right now, first-degree sexual assault of the child, the most serious offense, carries a mandatory prison sentence of 15 years under this new law. But it's been criticized that this is too expensive. Long prison sentences may not be necessary for some first-time offenders, and when inmates are released, they may be ill-equipped to return to society after a long prison stay. What would you say to those who are criticizing the law in this way?
Well, the criticism has been few and far between. There are those who have criticized it, but it's been fairly mild. I think most people recognize, because we spend a lot of time meeting with professionals in every area of child care, the psychologists that talk to people, the folks that work at the regional center that deal with the sex offenders. We met with all of them in designing this bill, and so I feel very good about the background work that was done to make sure this was the right kind of law. The price is high, but as far as I'm concerned, there's no price that's too high to take care of our kids and to keep these people off the streets. The monitoring, for example, before this law passed, before it became effective here not too long ago, we did not have the ability to monitor the worst sex offenders for life. Even if a probation officer thought, I've got to monitor this guy by an ankle bracelet or some other means, we didn't have any method under the law to do that. If somebody was in prison for a sex offense and they were getting ready to get out, their time was up, and they said, I just can't help it. I want to offend against a 10-year-old child when I get out. I just still feel strongly that I need to do that. We couldn't keep them in prison. Now we can. If the doctor says they're at risk to children when they get out, we can keep them committed. The Attorney General's office can go to a judge and say, this person is still a risk. We insist that they stay in jail, and if the judge agrees, they'll stay in jail. And as for the sentences against those who offend against children under 12, personally, that doesn't offend my conscience at all. If somebody gets convicted of first-degree sexual assault against a child, a 10-year-old, penetration of a child, 15 years is a small price to pay. Other states have done 25, and the only reason we did 15 is because there were those that said, what if it's a false accusation? What if it's a family, inside of the family, as often these things are, and the mother convinces the child to, try to make an allegation against the father. Well, that's what appeals are for, and I have enough faith in our judicial system that I think we're not going to make those kind of mistakes, that I think we can do the right thing. When somebody offends against a child, they deserve to pay a steep price. They know what they're doing. And to have them spend 15 years, that doesn't bother my conscience at all. I'll sleep just fine at night.
Mm-hmm. Just to add to what you said, for viewers who don't know, that also the important measure, actually what Heineman really liked about it too, is that certain sex offenders will be supervised for the rest of their lives. Like right now, their only requirement is to register with the Nebraska State Patrol as a sex offender.
That's right.
But now they'll be supervised to make sure that they're staying away from areas where children are.
And we had sex offenders telling us, sex offenders themselves saying this is effective. They say that the sex offenders would say, I do better when I know someone's watching. And so these were sex offenders telling us how to manage this process. And they said lifetime supervision works. They want that frequent contact with their probation officer.
They want that accountability.
They don't want to, many of them don't want to offend. Sometimes they just can't help it. And that monitoring helps them do the right thing.
Okay. We're gonna tackle a lot of topics today, so I'm moving on to another one and talking about electrocution and the method that we use here in our state, the electric chair, the sole means of execution here in our state, and that is been criticized nationwide as being the only state, of course, who continues to use this method. And I know when you were in the unicameral, you were working and trying to get this changed and hoping that it would be changed, maybe looking at other methods of execution like lethal injection. We're still here with the electric chair. Where does it stand now, and what is your office doing with this?
Nebraska is the last state out of 50, of course, to have electrocution as our sole method of execution. Other states have it as a secondary method when they switch from electrocution to lethal injection. They give those who will be executed the option of choosing which they want, so they have it as a secondary method. Some inmates have said, no, I want to stay with electrocution. Is it cruel and unusual? The Supreme Court and other courts have said no, it's not. But that's a community standard that changes. Now that we're the only state, there's at least a straight-faced argument that it might be cruel and unusual, violating the United States Constitution. I don't believe it is. I mean, I'm not here to say that it's pretty or that it's as easy as lethal injection. The reason I offered as a state senator a lethal injection bill twice and made it my personal priority is it seemed to me that there's no reason to cause additional pain, and if it does, the goal is to put someone to death. It's not to cause them pain and put them to death. And so I did worry that a court might rule Nebraska's method unconstitutional. Now, it hasn't happened yet. We wait for the Nebraska Supreme Court to make yet another decision. They've ruled before that it's not unconstitutional, but we wait, and we've asked them in the Carrie Dean Moore case, please make your decision. It's been on their desk for some time, and they'll make their decision when they're ready.
Would that change a case? How would that affect our state if they ever ruled it unconstitutional?
Well,
that change future past cases?
If they ruled unconstitutional, we have no method of carrying out the death penalty. And everybody that's on death row will be commuted to life, presumably, because there is no constitutional method. And that's why I offered the lethal injection bills. But frankly, Senator Ernie Chambers is a very formidable foe. He wants this state to look its choice of the death penalty in the eye. He wants it to be as brutal as it can be so that we know what we're doing. He doesn't want us to be able to turn away, in his words, from what it is the state's doing. And so I think Senator Chambers has 2 more years before he's term limited. I would be surprised if the legislature is able to make that change while he's in the legislature. He's a very powerful
he is.
Foe.
Yeah, people who have watched any of the debates know that he'll filibuster anything.
And very principled. I mean, he believes it to his core that it is wrong for the state to do this, and I respect him for that. I disagree. I'm comfortable with the state executing the worst of the worst. I don't celebrate it, but I'm comfortable with it as a choice, as a punishment for a very select number of people who have crossed all lines of decency.
Okay, Attorney General, let's move on here to talk about the most visible division of the Attorney General's office, which is consumer protection. You handle so many cases, 14,000 consumer calls last year, recovered more than $1 million for Nebraskans. So I know that this is a high priority for your office as well. Talk to us a little bit about some of the complaints that come into your office. What is the most common complaint, for instance?
Oh, identity theft is a very common complaint. People routinely have their identities stolen either through scams or their purse is stolen or their wallet is stolen. So we try to help people through that morass. Complaints against businesses. We function also very much like the Better Business Bureau, with the difference being that we have teeth. If we find a business that has been breaking the law, we can prosecute and have pursued businesses in that fashion. So someone buys a chair or a couch from a business and it's a lemon and they try to take it back and the seller won't do so. We've had great success in getting businesses to do the right thing. And most businesses, by the way, do the right thing without us asking, but there are those who have crossed lines, and we will help businesses to make the right decision to treat their customers fairly and honestly when they don't do it themselves. And we've had a lot of success. I mean, the vast majority, more than 90% of these complaints are resolved to the satisfaction of the consumer. So people that have been wronged, oftentimes we can make it right.
Okay. Well, you mentioned identity theft, and not to get into this very detailed, but what are some of the recommendations that your office gives and to safeguard ourselves against identity theft?
Well, people are often scammed because they want to believe that the person on the other end of the line is as honest as they are. So there's an offer made, or there's a request. I'm calling from the bank and I need your name and social security number to verify our records. The thing I would tell people is be a little skeptical. If you didn't initiate the call, be very skeptical about who's on the other end and why they need that information. Your bank already has your social security number and your birth date, and they know how much money's in your account, and they're not going to call to verify that information. But people want a hope or a lottery scam. People will be told over the phone they've won the lottery, and they're so anxious to have that be true that they'll send money to pay the taxes on the lottery. Well, it's a scam. Be a little skeptical if you didn't initiate the call, because a lot of times what happens is you end up getting fleeced and your identity is stolen. Just be a bit skeptical about who that is on the other end of the phone calling you.
Well, we hear senior citizens, the elderly, those that are most at risk for scams. Even though I know your office does a good job at educating people and trying to get the warnings out there, why do they continue to be the target and continue to bite into these scams?
Well, seniors, I mean, some are they're home perhaps, so they can be reached on the phone during the day. Many have money; they've saved up their whole life, and they have a nest egg that they've saved up and that they're now spending down because they're not working, if they're retired, and so that's why and some are lonely. If they're alone and they've lost a spouse, or they're just by themselves, they're a little bit lonely. So maybe they're a little more susceptible to that conversation over the phone. They just want somebody to talk to. But seniors need to be very skeptical about calls they don't initiate. And people who have parents that are seniors need to kind of keep an eye on the finances. If all of a sudden mom or dad's withdrawing $5,000 or $10,000 for no apparent reason, you might want to ask yourself why. I know banks do a pretty good job at keeping an eye on their customers, but I think the children of seniors can do a good job keeping an eye on their parents as well.
Okay, good idea. Medicare Part D, the latest scam, or one of the most recent scams. Tell us a little bit about that one and what people should be aware of.
Seniors right now are signing up for Medicare Part D, and there are dozens of companies that offer this insurance coverage. It's for prescription drugs. And seniors are trying to understand exactly how it works and weed through the dozens of companies that are offering their services. Well, some companies that are at least false companies are calling seniors and asking for social security number, bank account information, or asking seniors to sign up over the phone and send money, which is against the law. It's against federal law for any of these companies, and the real companies won't do it because they know the rules. It's the false companies, it's the fraud acts that are calling seniors and saying, send money and you'll be enrolled in Medicare Part D. It's a scam. Seniors need to take their time. They need to look through the Medicare and You book. They need to ask for any information in writing so that they can review it on their own time. Don't be pressured, and don't give away that personal information over the phone unless you initiated the call.
Internet scams, I know, is something else that your office deals with. Are you surprised at how often you find that people become victims to scams?
People, again, they're hopeful, and these scams come to me as well. I mean, I have email, we all do.
Right.
I get these scams. I'm not immune because I'm Attorney General to any of this. My wife had her wallet stolen and our identity was stolen, just like I got to experience it firsthand.
Oh gosh.
But these internet scams, the Nigerian scam, for example, people need to understand if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. If somebody says to you, I have $10 million, and if you allow me to put it in your account, you can keep one and then wire the other 9 off. All they're looking for is your bank account. As soon as you give it to them, it's going to get cleaned out. So again, if you didn't initiate the call, be very careful. But that's not to say that the internet, people need to be scared of it. If you initiate the contact and it's with somebody that you know and trust, it's Best Buy or it's the Furniture Mart, and you know who these people are, you've initiated the contact over the phone or over the internet, you have nothing to be afraid of. Mm-hmm. It's the calls that come in unsolicited that you need to think about twice.
Okay, well, I want to talk about several new developments within different cities in the state. Let's talk about some of the contractors versus the con artists, and how do you pick a good contractor, because I know that that's another issue that you deal with.
Yeah, we've been prosecuting a couple of builders here recently. We've probably prosecuted a dozen since I've been Attorney General, and that's a very difficult situation for people because some of these builders were very highly regarded by Better Business Bureau and other sources. But you really need to know your builder, and you need to make sure that most people use a lender at the time they're building a house. Most people aren't paying cash. Have that lender involved to check and ensure that all the subcontractors are being paid in a timely manner. So when you pay your builder $30,000 or $40,000 or $50,000 and they're paying the drywaller, make sure those liens have been released by the subcontractors. There are, of course, scammers out there that are contractors. Most contractors are good, honest people that are doing the right thing, but you really need to check references and get to know who it is you're dealing with, or you can get taken. It's a very sticky business. You need to be careful because the good ones are very good, but there are a handful who I know drive the rest of them crazy because they're dishonest.
Okay, well, John, before we wrap up today, I want to ask you, what are your future plans? Plan to run for the state's governor position in the future?
You know, I'm up for re-election this year. I have no opponent, which is a great position to be in. As for my future plans, I love being Attorney General. I love serving Nebraska. I've made more money than this in my life. It's not about money. I love to serve. I mean, the one thing that I'm blessed to have discovered about myself is I love to serve. It makes me feel like what I'm doing is important when I can help other people. And so I do love this job. I've got little kids, and I want to be in a place where I can spend time with them as they grow up. You only get one chance to watch your kids grow up. And so this can get awful busy sometimes, but I want to keep them front and center, they and my wife. But as for the future, who knows? You know, Nebraskans are pretty smart, and they're going to know if I'm busting my tail doing a great job as Attorney General, then maybe someday they'll want to promote me. And if I'm not, they're not going to want to promote me. So my goal is to do the best I can as Attorney General. I love the job. I feel like it's a privilege every day, and I leap out of bed to do it. I've never had a day where I've said, boy, I don't want to go to work today. I love it.
Well, that's good to hear. And I thank you so much for your time and being on the show today with us today.
You're welcome.
Nebraska Attorney General John Bruning. I want to also give the web address for the Attorney General's office, www.ago.state.ne.us. The Consumer Protection Division phone number, 1-800-727-6432, a number that you can call if you have a complaint. And thank you for joining us for this week's edition of Consider This.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at unotv.unomaha.edu. If you'd like to share your comments about this show, call UNO TV at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours.
The 9th season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Sunday at 5 p.m.